Welcome to the Deep Dive. We dig into complex topics to pull out the essentials so you can get up to speed fast. Today, we're tackling something huge: habit formation and change.
Yeah, this is fundamental. If you're aiming for anything new, fitness, sustainable living, any goal really, habits are, well, they're the engine.
Absolutely. And we've gone through a lot of material for this. Insights from Edelweiss Mutual Fund, NIH News and Health, White Rose Research Online, and James Clear's work, too.
A good mix.
Our mission here, to really break down the science and the strategies behind habits, giving you actionable stuff without, drowning you in information.
We want to make it useful.
Exactly. Oh, and quick note before we jump in, if you're curious about AI, our friends at rajamanikam.com have a great course. You can grab a discount with the code QET.
Good to know. So habits, it's like looking at the invisible wiring of our daily lives, isn't it?
Totally. Those automatic things we...
Right, the things that guide us, sometimes for good, sometimes not so much. Our sources give us a really rich picture, from the brain science involved to how our environment shapes things.
And that difference between just setting goals and actually building systems, that's key.
Definitely.
Okay, let's start with the basics. What is a habit? The Edelweiss piece calls them self-reinforcing loops. You do the action, you get a reward, and that loop gets stronger.
Like a little feedback cycle in your head. Action, reward, strengthen. Action, reward, strengthen.
Makes sense. And the NIH backs this up, saying habits form through repetition until they're automatic. Like you don't consciously decide every step of brushing your teeth.
Exactly. Dr. Nora Volkow at NIH, she's a top neuroscientist, stresses that understanding this biology, how these pathways get etched in, is crucial for making positive lifestyle changes stick.
So things like showering, brushing teeth, they're just helpful habits running on autopilot.
Yeah, Volkow points out they're normal, often really helpful parts of life, unconscious action.
And it's not just a few things, is it? I was struck by the White Rose research, citing studies, suggesting a really big chunk of our daily behavior is just repeated stuff in the same situation.
It's surprisingly high.
And they even mention neuroscience suggesting like most of our actions rely on this automatic thinking. It kind of makes you wonder how much of your day is just running a script.
It is wild when you think about it. And these habits, they're not just personal quirks. The White Rose stuff also points out how environmentally relevant behaviors, home energy use, things like that, are often deeply habitual.
Right. So understanding habits isn't just about self-improvement. It connects to bigger issues, sustainability, too.
Absolutely.
Okay, so habits are powerful, often unconscious. Now, this idea from James Clear really jumped out at me. The difference between goals and systems.
Yes. Goals are the destination, the outcome you want.
Like, I want to lose 20 pounds.
Right. But the system is the process, the daily actions you take to get there. Clear argues we should focus way more on the system.
He uses the example of a writer, doesn't he?
Yeah, instead of obsessing over write a book, which is a huge goal, focus on the system. Write for 30 minutes every day.
And if you stick to the system,
the outcome often takes care of itself.
Yeah.
You end up with the pages, maybe even the book, without the constant pressure of the massive goal looming over you. It's like building a reliable staircase instead of just staring at the summit.
I found this part fascinating. Clear says focusing only on goals can actually make you less happy right now.
How so?
Because you're always in this state of, I haven't reached it yet, I'm not good enough yet. It puts happiness off until some future date.
That makes a lot of sense. You're constantly measuring the gap. He suggests committing to the process, finding satisfaction in the doing.
Right. And there's another problem with goals, according to her.
What's that?
They can actually work against long-term progress. What happens after you hit the goal?
The motivation can just vanish. You see it all the time with diets or fitness challenges. People reach the goal, then rebound because the system wasn't sustainable or the goal was the only driver.
The classic yo-yo effect. Plus, goals kind of imply you control everything, right? But often you don't. Systems let you adapt.
Exactly. Systems have feedback loops built in. If something isn't working, a good system lets you see that and adjust. You can't always control the outcome, but you can control your process, your system.
Okay, so systems over goals. Now, how do we actually change these things? How do we break the bad habits and build the good ones?
Well, the NIH article offers some practical advice.
Yeah.
First step, awareness. You have to actually notice the bad habit and what triggers it.
Like identifying the cue, the time of day, the place, the emotion.
Precisely. And then you need strategies to counter it. Maybe avoiding the queue altogether if you can. Like don't walk past the vending machine if that's your trigger.
Simple avoidance. What else?
There's this interesting research by Dr. Baumeister, mentioned by NIH, about self-control being like a muscle.
A muscle? How?
It can get tired if you overuse it, making lots of decisions, resisting temptations.
Yeah.
It can fatigue your self-control.
Okay, I feel that sometimes.
But the good news is, like a muscle, You can also strengthen it over time with practice. Doing small self-control exercises regularly can build up your overall resilience.
But it's not a magic fix, right? Dr. Volko warned there's no single method that works for everyone.
Absolutely not. It's individual. And this loops back to that Edelweiss point about systems. They say we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our system.
Ooh, that's powerful. So even for breaking bad habits, just wanting it isn't enough. You need a good system in place.
Exactly. You need a replacement routine, strategies for when you slip up, maybe changing your environment. The system supports the change.
Which leads nicely into another James Clear concept, identity-based habits. This one really made me think. He argues that lasting change starts with focusing on your identity first. Who do you want to be?
Rather than just what you want to achieve.
Yeah. He says our current behaviors just reflect our current identity, who we believe we are. So to change the behavior long term, you need to start believing new things about yourself.
So instead of I want to run a marathon, the performance goal, it's I want to become a runner. The identity goal.
Exactly. And then the actions, the running, the training, they flow naturally from that identity. You're just acting like the person you believe you are.
It reframes the whole process. The goal isn't the task. The goal is embodying the identity.
And how do you actually do that? He emphasizes small, achievable steps, tiny wins.
Right. Don't try to overhaul everything at once.
Commit to something really small for just, if you want to be a writer, maybe it's just writing one sentence or for 5 minutes every day.
It's about building evidence for yourself. Each small action is like a vote for that new identity.
I'm the kind of person who writes every day, even if it's just a little bit.
Exactly. Those small wins accumulate and solidify the identity.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The environment. We mentioned it briefly, but the White Rose research really digs into how design influences habits, especially around society.
Yeah, they talk about two main angles, which are actually quite complementary. There's the social psychology view, which tends to focus on the individual, how design can nudge your behavior.
Like making the recycling bin more prominent than the trash can.
Sort of, yeah. That's designed for sustainable behavior, or DFSB, using psychological principles to influence individual choices. Think smart meters giving you real-time energy.
Got it. And the other angle?
That's more sociological. It's called practice-oriented design. It looks less at individual choices and more at the bigger picture, the shared routines, the social norms, the systems we all operate within.
So less about nudging one person, more about reshaping the whole practice.
Exactly. How can design disrupt the cues that trigger unsustainable collective habits or promote better ones?
They gave an example today.
Yeah, like adding friction to undesirable things. Speed bumps are a classic. They make speeding inconvenient, changing the practice of driving fast in that area.
That makes sense. And they also mentioned targeting moments of...
Right, like when someone moves house or starts a new job. These are times when our old routines are disrupted anyway.
So we're more open to forming new habits then.
Exactly. Interventions can be much more effective during those transition periods. It's a prime time to reshape practices.
Fascinating. Okay, another tool the NIH highlighted is mindfulness.
Ah, yes. Dr. Margaret Chesney talks about this. It's really about awareness again.
Paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment.
That's the core of it. And the benefits seem pretty wide-ranging according to the research. NIH cites managing stress, coping better with illness, reducing anxiety.
Feeling more relaxed, more engaged with life, better self-esteem. Sounds good.
Definitely. And for habits, mindfulness can help you become more aware of those unhealthy patterns as they're happening.
So you can catch yourself.
Yeah, and maybe make a different choice. Dr. Chesney mentioned mindful eating as a prime example.
Instead of just shoveling food in while watching TV.
Right. Pay attention. Are you actually hungry? What does the food taste like? When do you feel full? It breaks the automatic mindless pattern, takes you off autopilot.
But it takes work, right? Mindfulness isn't automatic either.
No, the NIH is clear on that. It requires commitment, regular practice, but it doesn't have to be complicated.
Like what?
Simple things. Taking a few deep breaths consciously during the day, going for a walk and really noticing the sounds and sights, even just eating one meal mindfully. Small practices add up.
Okay, one last major area, pulling from James Clear again, and also Scott Young. It's about understanding how progress actually happens, the shape of it.
Ah, the growth curves. Logarithmic versus exponential.
Exactly. Explain logarithmic first.
Logarithmic growth is where you see big improvements really fast at the beginning, but then the gains start to slow down. They get smaller and smaller over time.
Like learning a language, you pick up basic phrases quickly.
But getting truly fluent takes much longer. The progress feels slower later on. Same with starting a new fitness routine. Initial gains can be rapid.
Okay, and exponential.
That's the opposite, kinda. It often starts really slow, you put in effort, but you don't see much happen for a while. It can feel discouraging.
Like investing,
Wow.
building a network.
Perfect examples. But then if you stick with it, the progress starts to compound and suddenly it takes off. The growth becomes rapid, sometimes surprisingly so.
So it's crucial to know which curve you're likely.
Absolutely. If you expect quick results from something that's actually exponential, you might give up right before the big growth spurt happens. Aligning expectations.
So how do you speed things up? Or, well, work with the curve?
For logarithmic stuff, breaking tasks down helps maintain momentum when gains slow. For exponential, it's often about finding the highest leverage points, the things that will compound the most.
Clear also mentions that weightlifting coach, Yuri Vardanyan.
Right. Prioritize volume before intensity. Build a solid foundation first. Don't rush to the super heavy weights or the most complex stuff immediately.
That makes sense. Avoid burnout. And this idea that average speed wins in the long run.
Yeah, consistent, sustainable progress often beats flashy, unsustainable bursts. Use Southwest Airlines as an example. They intentionally limited the growth rate to ensure they could maintain quality and sustainability.
Setting upper limits, not just lower ones. That's interesting.
It prevents you from overreaching and crashing. And one really practical tip, clear offers for staying on track with habits.
Let me guess. Measure something.
You got it. But specifically, measure backward.
Backward. How?
Instead of constantly projecting forward, how close am I to the goal? Regularly look back at what you've actually done. Review your recent action, your consistency.
So focus on the process you've completed.
Exactly. That short-term feedback is gold for building habits. It shows you're sticking to the system. And, he argues, it can actually make you happier.
Happier? Why?
Because you're appreciating the progress you have made right here, right now, instead of always focusing on the gap between you and some future ideal. You see the steps you've taken.
That's a great perspective shift. Okay, let's try and wrap this up.
So the big picture seems to be, lasting change isn't just about willpower or setting giant goals.
Right. It's about understanding habits, designing effective systems, and consciously shaping your identity.
And using tools like mindfulness to increase awareness and understanding the nature of progress itself. Small, consistent actions driven by who you want to become. That seems to be the core message.
So for everyone listening, maybe take a moment to think about a goal you have. What's the system you could build around it? What small identity shift could support it?
Yeah, what's one tiny sustainable step you could take, like today or tomorrow? Don't wait for the perfect moment. Just start building that evidence for yourself.
And here's a final thought to chew on, based on what we just discussed. How might really understanding the difference between logarithmic and exponential growth change your approach?
Knowing whether to expect quick wins early or to brace for a slow start with a potentially huge payoff later, that could really affect how you tackle new skills or long-term projects, couldn't it?
Definitely.
And one last time, if that AI course sparked your interest, check out rajmanikam.com. Use the code QPT for that discount.
It's rajamanikam.com, code. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into habits. Hope it gave you some perspectives.